In the movie, I was on the edge of my seat. I had no idea what was going to happen. And even though in the book, part of me, I was like, change the ending. I don't care if it's not faithful to the book. Hello, and thank you for joining me here at Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations. My name is Laura, and this is Casper. He is joining me today because I am talking about Cujo by Stephen King, published in 1981, and then the movie from 1983 is directed by Louis Teague. But yeah, so since this is about a dog, I thought it was fitting to have one of my dogs in the video. And Casper just went to the groomer yesterday, so he's looking very pretty. And it's been like, I don't know, 2 years or more than 2 years since I've shown him in a video. But yeah, Casper is a very sweet dog, as was Cujo before things went awry. But yeah, I'm definitely more of a small dog person for a variety of reasons. And this book, I mean, Casper is up to date on his vaccinations, of course, so he has his rabies vaccine. But yeah, if a small dog got rabies, if Cujo was a little Maltese, things wouldn't have been as horrible as they ended up being, of course. And so big dogs, they're just so much work. But yeah, anyway, basically I'm a small dog person and Casper is such a sweetie. And yeah, I just wanted to have him here for at least the start and the end of today's video. Comment down below if you have a dog and their name and their breed. But for Cujo, I'm just going to get right into the details of the plot. So no spoiler-free section, we're just diving right in. So there are kind of 3 different storylines going on here. So we have the main storyline, which focuses on the Trenton family, consisting of Vic, Donna, and their 4-year-old son, Tad. And Vic is in marketing, and early on there's a fiasco when the cereal brand they work for has made a cereal with faulty dye that has kids. In the book, we hear this in the movie too, but we get a scene in the book where a girl throws up what her mom thinks is blood when really it's just this cereal dye that is messed up. But yeah, even though this has caused no actual harm to the children, it has caused enough drama that news stations, the press, comedians, they're all having a heyday with this drama. And so Vic and his partner Roger have to spend 10 to 14 days traveling to these locations where their businesses are being held in order to get things under control. And honestly, while reading about all of this in the book, with the sharp serial professor and them trying to save the account, it kind of dragged the story down, in my opinion. In the movie, we see less of it, but it's still present enough, and we learn as much as we need to know to make sense for the main storyline. But yeah, in the book, we were just hearing too much about this, and who reads Cujo and actually cares about the drama with sharp cereal, right? And so I felt like it just wasn't necessary. But in the end of the book, we do learn that the account is saved and sharp cereal keeps them on. But in the movie, we never hear how this pans out for them. But before Vic leaves for his 10 to 14 day work trip, right before, in the book, he gets a card in the mail from a guy named Steve Kemp, who his wife Donna had been having an affair with. However, Donna ends it, and this makes Steve mad, which is why he sends the postcard to Vic. And so he confronts her about this, and they talk about it, and they try to get to as good of a place as possible before he has to leave. Whereas in the movie, we don't get the card. Instead, he sees Donna and Steve together, and he later confronts her about it. And again, in both, their relationship is pretty rocky when Vic has to leave. But in the book, we did see, they had a few moments where they were connecting for a minute, and as if the drama hadn't happened. And so in the book, you're left feeling hopeful about them going forward. Whereas in the movie, I felt it was a bit more precarious. But also in the book, we get a scene, not in the movie, where he asks Donna, why she did this essentially, and she shares what led her to have an affair. And I don't condone cheating, of course, but what she says felt very relatable in some ways, and it made sense as to why she would have an affair despite still loving Vic, right? I feel like sometimes people can be very black and white, and it's yes, cheating is wrong, but you can love your spouse and still cheat on them. That doesn't make it okay, but it can happen. I had someone comment on my baby girl video because in that movie, Nicole Kidman cheats on her husband, and someone commented being like, she deserves to go to hell for cheating on him. And it's oh, okay, a bit overdramatic. But anyway, so I really liked this section in the book where she explains what she is going through and what led her to make this decision, that she put an end to it, right? So she realized it's not what she wanted. But I just love how King writes fleshed out characters who often are not all bad or all good, right? Like they're complicated. Donna is not the perfect wife or a mother who ends up in this terrible situation. And I feel like if she was quote unquote perfect, people might think it's easier to feel bad for her, but because she's complicated, people might be like, oh, I mean, she sucked. So do I really feel bad that she's in this situation later on? Like, yes, you still should feel bad. And if anything for me, because she has these imperfections and because she feels more human, it makes me feel for her all the more when she gets in this situation later. And this is something I talk about in my video for 1922, which is another Stephen King story. And this is a book versus movie video that will be up on Patreon. So if you join the $2 tier on Patreon, you will be able to watch my video for 1922, as well as my video for Psycho, which will be out the end of October. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to read a bit from what she tells Vic in this conversation. So it starts out where she's talking about how with Tad being in preschool, it has made her feel old and scared of the future and scared of what her life will become. And again, this feels very real because women who give up careers to be moms all have a moment at some point where they feel like they aren't as needed as a mom anymore and they struggle with their sense of identity. And it doesn't even need to be a situation where she gave up a career for it, but just any woman who dedicates her life to being a mom at some point, your kids don't need you anymore, right? And so then you struggle with your sense of identity. And, stay-at-home moms are fantastic. I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. But yeah, inevitably, she too had a point where she was trying to figure out what to do with her life, right? Once you're not raising kids anymore. And so that's what Donna's experiencing. And initially, Vic latches onto the fact that she says she feels old. And he's like, you cheated on me just because you felt old? And she's like, no, like it's more than that. And we go on to read. She took his hands and spoke earnestly into his face, knowing that she might never speak so earnestly or honestly to a man again. It's more. It's knowing you can't wait any longer to be a grown-up or wait any longer to make your peace with what you have. It's knowing that your choices are being narrowed almost daily. For a woman, no, for me, that's a brutal thing to have to face. Wife, that's fine. But you're gone at work. Even when you're home, you're gone at work so much. Mother, that's fine too. But there's a little less of it every year because every year the world gets another little slice of him. Men, they know what they are. They have an image of what they are. They never live up to the ideal and it breaks them. And maybe that's why so many men die unhappy before their time. But they know what being a grown-up is supposed to mean. They have some kind of handle on 30, 40, 50. They don't hear that wind, or if they do, they find a lance and tilt at it thinking it must be a windmill or something that needs knocking down. And what a woman does, what I did, was to run from becoming. I got scared, that's all. I got scared when I started looking at knickknacks or thinking about taking a pottery course or yoga or something like that. And then the only place to run from the future is into the past. It was fun. It was like being in college again. It was like a dream, a stupid dream. And it was like he was white noise. He blotted out that wind sound. The flirting part was fun. The sex, it was no good. I can't explain why not, except that I still loved you through all of it and understood that I was running away. She looked up at him again, crying now. He's running too. He's made a career of it. He's dreaming he's still in college and protesting the war in Vietnam. That's why it was him, I guess. But yeah, so in the book, again, it felt like maybe they were in a bit of a better place, although it, of course, was still very rocky. And so, yeah, these are the conditions under which Vic has to go on this long business trip. And Donna's Pinto had been having issues, and Vic didn't have time to take it to the mechanic Joe Camber before he left. And so Donna decides to take it in. And in the book, she had left a note in their kitchen saying going up to the Camber house, have Tad with me. And she had wanted to call a babysitter, but Tad was crying. So she just decides to bring him with her. And in the book, in both book and movie, Steve Kemp is still upset that Donna ended it with him. And so he shows up and trashes the house. But in the book, he also erases this note she had written and puts a note of his own. And then the other storyline going on here is about the Cambers, the mechanic Joe Cambers, who Donna takes her car to. So they live outside of town, and Joe is a skilled mechanic, but he's also an abusive husband and father. Although his son does look up to him, and Joe's wife, Brett's mother, Her name is Charity, and she can see the ways in which her 10-year-old son is starting to take after this man, and she doesn't like the future she sees for him. And Joe is very controlling and doesn't let Charity go anywhere, but she wins $5,000 in the lottery. And so she uses this money to kind of bribe Joe, being like, here, you can have all of this money. Just let me take Brett on a trip to go see my sister and her family. And ultimately, after a while, Joe eventually agrees. And he also decides like, while she's gone, maybe I'll leave for a week too and go party it up in Boston with my buddy who lives down the road. And in the book, we hear specifically why she wants to take Brett to her sister's house is because her sister, married well, quote unquote. And so she's like, I want to take him to go see how better families live and how better men treat their wives and children. And so she wants him to get experiences outside of their tight little bubble because Joe is a bad excuse of a father and husband, and so are his friends. And so, yeah, she's wanting to get Brett to experience more to help him not end up like his father. And we don't get as many details in the movie, but we do see, how she wants to go see her sister and she wins the lottery. And I feel like they did a good job at giving us enough that we see that this is a messed up marriage she is in and that he is abusive. And so we didn't need to know all of the details as to why she wants to go see her sister because we can come to our own assumptions based on this abusive marriage she's in, right? We can understand why she wants to get away, at least for a little bit, if not permanently. And once she leaves, we never return to Charity or Brett's storyline, whereas in the book, we're constantly going back and forth between what's happening with Donna, what's happening with Vic, what's happening with Charity. And we see how the trip to see her sister didn't go quite as planned. Like, it's been so long since she's seen her sister, for one. But also she sees how Brett has already been so influenced by his father because he has like an attitude about the husband because he's like, oh, he's just a pencil pusher and he can't even fix anything or build anything with his own hands. And so he kind of looks down on the guy in some ways. And so it's not like a bad trip, but Charity is also realizing maybe how much Joe has already gotten to Brett. And also in the end, we get the sister's perspective. And she is thinking how she wishes Charity had never come because they had a rough childhood and the sister has tried to put that behind them and she's made a new life for herself. But Charity got stuck in the same cycles, right, that they were born into. And so Charity being there is a reminder to this sister of all that she's left behind. And so she feels resentful that Charity even came to visit. But then the fact that Joe is killed because, by the way, Joe's friend that he was going to hit the town with, he is the first to be killed by Cujo, and then Joe is the second. But yeah, this is a positive thing for Charity, despite, she's worried about how to break it to Brett, but she's happy about this, right? Because throughout this whole story, she's been wanting to leave him and yet struggling with the actual act of leaving him and worried about his influence on Brett. And so yeah, when she hears that he's dead, she's kind of happy about it. And so a lot of sad things happen in this book, and yet things end positively for Charity and Brett. And in the end, they even get a new dog, and they are sure to get it vaccinated this time. By the way, Cujo, what a great advertisement to make sure you're getting your dogs their vaccinations. And to move on to the titular character of Cujo. So he is a huge Saint Bernard. In the movie, he's big, but in the book, it says how even for a Saint Bernard, he's massive, like he's the size of a small pony, essentially. And he is a good boy who one day is chasing a rabbit into a small cave, and he ends up being bit by a rabid bat. And the Cambers aren't very good owners because one, they didn't get him his rabies shots, which was it common to not get your dogs those shots back in the early 80s? Like, was that a common thing not to even care about that? I'm not really sure. But yeah, he was not vaccinated, and so he gets infected with rabies. But also when he has the bite on his nose, no one even notices it. And it isn't until the day they are going to leave that Brett finally notices that Cujo is acting strange. But Charity doesn't want him to mention it to Joe because she knows that Joe will just seize on this and use it as an excuse to keep them home. And then Joe himself doesn't see Cujo until he finds his friend's mangled body, and then he himself is attacked and killed. And I don't know what an animal looks like when it has rabies, and after this movie I'm scared to look, but the movie did a good job at making him look so gross, like with the mucus and stuff. I hated having to look at him. I know it's not real, but I thought they did a good job. And also, the book has us in Cujo's mind. And so we see what he's going through mentally and how he is not himself, right? He is under the infection of this disease. And we see what sets him off. Casper keeps moving my stand thing. Casper. But yeah, so we have a lot of sympathy for Cujo because we are in his perspective and we realize he is not himself. And so the movie actually does a good job at also trying to put you in his perspective by like having the camera angle be like what he is seeing. And then they also do a good job at conveying how loud noises set him off mentally. And so, yeah, I actually thought they did a good job at showing how unwell Cujo is, right? And feeling some sympathy for him. And in both, before he is rabid, the Trentons had gone to Joe's and Tad had played with Cujo, and it was a positive experience as far as the dog was concerned. But then, of course, when Donna takes her dying Pinto up there, Cujo is now rabid and won't let them leave the car because he keeps trying to attack them. And the Pinto died upon arrival, and so they are literally just trapped in the car in the height of summertime. A problem which a cell phone could easily solve. If cell phones existed, this whole story wouldn't happen. But of course, this is 1981 in the book, and so they're stuck. And they are trapped for essentially 48 hours because it's like early Monday afternoon until early Wednesday afternoon. And again, it's crazy hot. The car is burning up. And in the book, they had snacks that she had packed for Tad, but those quickly run out. And she is thinking, on Monday, she's like, oh, the mailman on Tuesday morning will show up and he will save us. But in both book and movie, we see that the Cambers, because they were going out of town, they wanted to hold their mail. And so the mailman has no reason to go up there. And they live so up out of the way that no one would just drive by. Like you have to purposefully go up to where they live. So even the mailman has no reason to actually drive up there since he's not delivering the mail. And after the mailman doesn't show up, Donna tries to leave when they have been trapped for around 24 hours because she's trying to make a run for the phone inside, but Cujo attacks her and wounds her pretty badly. But she is able to get back in the car after. And in the movie and book, but maybe almost more so the book, it felt like the perfect storm as to how this all happened, right? Because so many unfortunate coincidences caused them to be stuck as long as they were. And it almost felt like too coincidental, kind of like sometimes books will do the opposite, where too many good coincidences lead to someone being saved. And it seems too far-fetched, right? Because it's like, that's an awful lot of coincidences. And so it almost got to that point with Cujo, and yet ultimately, I think it still felt pretty believable. But yeah, with the movie, I want to shout out the performances by both Donna as well as Tad. So Dee Wallace and Danny Pintaro. So Danny Pintaro as Tad was just so cute and he had the sweetest little voice and he gave such a great performance. And early on, we see an awkward dinner scene where Donna and Vic don't have much to say to each other. But then Tad is being silly with his dad and this lightens the mood. And it was such a sweet scene that again, like it just felt so genuine. His performance just felt so real. And also the first scene of him when he is trying to turn off the light and then run to his bed as quick as possible. Again, it was just so adorable. And then Dee Wallace as Donna was also just so incredible. And she talked about how this was the hardest performance she's ever done because, yeah, even though she wasn't literally in this situation, like when you're putting yourself through this and acting it, like your body almost doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not, And when they first show up and Cujo attacks for the first time, that scene in the movie was incredible. And you just feel, so they're attacked and there's all of that going on. But then once they're safe and, shut the windows, Donna then tries to drive away, but the car won't start. And you just feel this scene in every way, right? Like you feel the terror, the shock, the horror. And then when the car won't start, like you feel just that pit in your stomach, right? The fact that they're stuck. And Tad's cries are also what makes such a big impact here as well, right? Because if it was just Donna, it would still be horrible, but having her young son there crying to be taken home it tugs at your heartstrings and it puts your stress, Donna's stress and therefore the viewer's stress is at a whole new level because the stakes are so high due to the fact that she has her son with her. And yeah, I loved this first scene when they arrive and it almost like made me want to cry because it was just so tense. And then when she can't leave, like you just feel that desperation and how dire it is. And Yeah, this was so effective. And again, it made me want to cry, just the thought of being stuck in that situation. And then there's another scene, this is the next day or something, when Tad is crying, saying he wants his dad. And Donna snaps at him because she's so, annoyed and frustrated. And again, I loved this scene because a parent in this situation, like Tad is totally justified in him being so upset and crying and saying he wants his dad and please take us home. Like, it makes sense that a 4-year-old would be doing this in this horrible situation. But it also makes sense that the parent would not be like this cool, calm, collected parent who's so patient with their child, right? It makes sense that the stress she is under, she would lash out and snap at him, right? And so again, it was one of those scenes where it just made the whole situation feel so real. And then also, kind of like I said, how the movie does do a good job replicating the book, how you feel bad for Cujo. And in the movie, like seeing him attacking the car, seeing him hurt himself as he's trying to get to Donna and Tad, yeah, you just feel bad for him too. Like you understand Donna's hate for him and you understand Tad's terror of him, and yet you still feel pity for him. And then to move on to the ending, so Vic in the book, so the book and movie are a little different, so I'll start with the book. So Vic is worried about Donna not answering the phone, and so he talks to Roger, his partner, and Roger convinces him to have the cops check out the house. And the cops call back saying that the house has been vandalized, and Vic right away knows that it's Steve, and he feels sure, like, oh, Steve has kidnapped them, like without a doubt. And so he flies home and he talks to the cops who are there, and they're asking, like, where's Donna's car? Like, if they're kidnapped, why is her car not here? And Vic tells them that she had mentioned taking it to the Camber garage. And so they do have a cop go up to the Cambers house to check it out. But Vic is just so certain that Steve kidnapped them. And so the cops are looking for Steve and eventually they catch him. However, Steve is adamant, being like, hey, I have no idea where Donna and Tad are. They weren't home when I vandalized the house. I don't know what happened. And Vic, at this point, he had been taking a nap because he was up all night. So he took a nap, and when he wakes up, he sees a note from the cops being like, hey, we got Kemp, but he says he has no idea where Donna and Tad are. And so Vic is going to go down to the station himself. But first he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go check the Camber house really quick just to get that out of the way, check it myself, and then I'll go down to the station. Meanwhile, the cop that had been sent to the Cambers earlier, he had gotten out of his car before calling in and letting them know that Donna's car was there. And so, of course, Cujo attacks and kills him. And that morning, Tad had had 2 seizures because he is on the verge of dying. And so after the cop is killed, Donna then gets out in a final attempt to beat Cujo, and ultimately she is able to kill him with this old baseball bat that belonged to Brett. And when Vic drives up, he just sees her just like relentlessly hitting Cujo, who is already dead. And Vic just feels horror at this scene. And for a split second, he just wants to drive away and leave this horrible scene behind, but ultimately he of course gets out of the car and he sees Tad inside the Pinto and he takes him out and he sees that he is dead, and he asks Donna, like, how long has Tad been dead? And Donna is in shock because she didn't know he had been dead, and she's like, wait, what? Like, he was alive when I put him in the back. And so she tries to resuscitate him, but he does not revive, and Donna herself is acting weird in part because of everything that's happened, but also she's in the early stages of rabies. But yeah, he calls the cops, the ambulance, and so Tad dies. He does not get revived. And then Donna is put in the hospital. She recovers from the rabies and the wounds, and she and Vic do stay together in the end. And then of Cujo, at the end of the book, we read, shortly following these mortal events in the Camber dooryard, Cujo's remains were cremated. The ashes went out to the trash and were disposed of at the Augusta Waste Treatment Plant. It would perhaps not be amiss to point out that he had always tried to be a good dog. He had tried to do all the things his man and his woman and most of all his boy had asked or expected of him. He would have died for them if that had been required. He had never wanted to kill anybody. He had been struck by something, possibly destiny or fate, or only a degenerative nerve disease called rabies. Free will was not a factor. Whereas in the movie, it's a bit different because Vic, for one, he doesn't call the cops initially. He just goes straight home because he's worried about what's going on. And that's when he sees the house has been vandalized. And so then he calls the cops. And again, they think Steve Kemp is behind all of this. And they do mention the Cambers garage. And so they do have a cop go out there. However, like the book, this guy dies before he calls in. And so later on, one of the other head cops come in to talk to Vic. And he's like, hey, we got Steve, but he swears he does not know where Donna and Tad are. And Vic is like, oh, what about the guy who went up to the Cambers? And the cop is kind of useless. And he's like, oh, like, I don't know, we haven't heard from him and I haven't followed up about it. And so Vic is kind of like disgusted by this cop's lack of action. And so he's like, oh, get out of my way. I'm going to go up there myself. But again, you know, the cop had been killed. And as in the book, Donna then gets out to fight Cujo and she seems to kill him with the bat. And then from here, she is trying to get Tad out of the car because again, he's on the brink of death. But then she can't get in the car because of the way the doors have been ruined by Cujo. She can't open the doors. And so Tad is stuck inside, which was such a tense scene. But eventually she breaks a window and grabs Tad, races him into the house to try to revive him and give him some water and give him CPR. And generally, I do not like movies that change the book ending in favor for a happier ending. Like when someone dies in the book, but then they live in the movie, that bothers me because I feel like it's, oh, the studios had to make sure it was happy. However, Tad's death in Cujo was not something that I felt was integral. It's not something that I thought was vital to the story of Cujo to have Tad die in the end. And so as she is trying to resuscitate him in the movie, I was on the edge of my seat. I had no idea what was going to happen. And even though he died in the book, part of me, I was like, change the ending. I don't care if it's not faithful to the book. Like, I want Tad to live. And ultimately he does revive. And it was, I cried. Because it was such an emotional moment, and after everything Donna and Tad have both been through, they deserved to have Tad live, right? And so in this movie just is so emotional and, you know, such heightened emotion, so much tension. And so when he comes back to life, I was so relieved and I cried and it was a fantastic scene. And I wanted to mention that Stephen King, in his book On Writing, which I have right there, he says that when he wrote Cujo, he was so deep in his addiction that he doesn't even remember writing it. And he has said that he doesn't like that he had Tad die in the end. And so he did help with this script to some extent. And he corrected this ending. He wanted Tad to live. And so I do like that King himself prefers the movie ending. And this is what he wishes he had written in the book. Again, just so many emotional moments in this movie. And this ending was just so incredible and I loved it. It does have an unnecessary moment after where Cujo jumps in the window because turns out he wasn't dead. And so then she shoots him with a gun. But yeah, from here, Vic drives up right as she is walking out with Tad, and it just ends right then and there. And then when it comes to book versus movie and, you know, my final thoughts. So again, I like the cast of this movie, especially Donna and Tad. And then there are some really cool camera shots, cool camera work going on. Just everything with Donna and Tad being trapped is just fantastic. All other aspects of the movie are fine. But yeah, where it really shines is in the second half once they're stuck. And I do like, though, that we don't get as much about Vic, you know, what's going on with his work life. I'm glad they cut that down. Because all we needed to know is, like, why he has to leave and how serious the situation is. From there, yeah, it was unnecessary. But also I wanted to mention another thing that is not in the movie is talk of Frank Dodd, who is a character from The Dead Zone, which I have a book versus movie video for, by the way. But he is mentioned because it's like, ooh, the boogeyman of Castle Rock, Frank Dodd. And it seems that he is like the monster living in Tad's closet. And so when we were getting this, I was thinking, I didn't know Cujo was going to get rabies. I didn't know that that was the premise of this story. And so I was like, oh, it's like the dog is going to be possessed by Frank Dodd. That's what's going to happen. And yet not really, because he gets rabies, but it maybe implies that Cujo's defenses are down due to the rabies, and so maybe there is a bit of Frank Dodd in him. But yeah, this was left out of the movie, which was fine by me. But I did like that they keep the monster words that Vic writes for Tad in order to make him feel safe, and he brings them with him in the car, and yeah, I liked all that stuff. But when it comes to which one wins, I feel like they're pretty equal. I felt equally invested in what was happening with Donna and Tad in both book and movie. And again, both convey the claustrophobia, the heat, the tension, the desperation, the anger, and the bond between Donna and Tad. And I'm almost inclined to say I felt their bond more in the movie, but I think just something about seeing it play out in front of you, and the performances were so great. And so yeah, and again, I cried in the movie, but I didn't cry in the book. Even with Tad dying, I didn't cry in the book. So I think I'm gonna say the movie wins. Yeah, they're both pretty equal, and I do like the charity stuff going on in the book, which was not in the movie. But I thought it was a great adaptation. I think they did a great job, and yeah, I'm gonna say the movie wins. Let me know your thoughts down below. Is that controversial to feel that way? I'm not sure, but yeah, thank you so much for a watch. Oh, actually, I have one more thing to say. There is talk of this being adapted by Darren Aronofsky. I don't know if it would be a series or a movie, but I would be very curious to see that. Do we need a remake of Cujo? Not really, but ultimately, would I watch it? Yeah, especially if it's done by Darren Aronofsky, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Cujo down below in the comments, the book, the movie, a future potential adaptation. This was announced just this year, so we'll see if it even happens. But don't forget to get your pets vaccinated, right? I wonder if this book and movie helped boost awareness of that. But anyway, Casper and I just want to thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share your thoughts down below. And again, head over to Patreon to watch my video for 1922. So say bye, Casper.